Hi, I attended a make.com event talking about AI agents and showing the new AI agent module. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. And I'm going to give you my first instinctive reaction to where it's going. And I'm not entirely sure it's going to solve a problem. But anyway, let's start with where we are at this point in time. And let me show you my agents. So here is how it works at the moment. And up here is probably my most complicated agent. And I'll just show you this because of how it works. So you've got the agent, you've got the system prompt, you've got the ability to add to MCPs, which I've done, which is kind of cool. And you've got these tools, which you can then use to run other scenarios, which do things or get knowledge. So you know, pretty useful, does the job, works. How is this going to work going forward? So this is just a scenario that was used for us to play around with and give a demo. I'm just going to show you the architectural construct of how agents are going to work. Number one, it looks like they're going to work within scenarios. So one of the demos we got was like a massive flow with an agent module here and an agent module here and an agent module here. I'll come on to why I think that's a problem later. And then within the agent module, you can add tools and add knowledge. And those then become these visual nodes here. From my playing around, those are single action nodes. So they would call a, let's say, Notion or Google Docs or whatever, and they would be a single action. So again, I think that in itself could make agents quite expensive in terms of the amount of credits they use. And then even within the agent, like where you had before that interface where you could put an input, see the output, in here, the chat with agent is simply what we would have now, which is the run this module kind of thing. I don't think there's anything different between right-clicking chat with agent and right-clicking run this module. No, there isn't. So there we go. But then again, they haven't fully released it, so that may change. So you get an input, you get an agent and so on, and then you can chain it and do other things, and you can keep going and add other agents to it. So that's how these scenarios will build up. I may show you one towards the end, which is from the demo, which is a bit more complicated. Now, what do I instinctively feel about this? I think what I liked about the old way is that you had a central place where you could manage the agent, what is in the agent, and then use that agent across multiple scenarios. One of the issues I see with this execution is that if you have an agent, you create an agent, you then want to use it in a different scenario. The solution that will shut it out was, well, you then just clone the scenario. But you now have the same agent in two scenarios being potentially configured differently in both scenarios. So your governance, in a way, goes out the window because they're already immediately abstracted from each other. In my view, the way you would then get over this solution, and this is where I think Make need to be careful because they said this was all done by user feedback, but I think they've got a very diverse user base and they need to triage that feedback a little bit differently. I can see how this execution would work for someone who creates the odd agent for their business and that's it. But if you're in an enterprise where you want to roll this out at scale or you're using it to underpin your business, and I've got 175 scenarios, 20 of which use an agent at the moment, the old module, having them cloned, that will create a problem. So a way around it, like I said, that will shut it as, create it as an on-demand scenario and create inputs and outputs for it. All right, okay, maybe. And then these tools or knowledge, like in my use case, some of those on-demand scenarios that I'm running with my existing AI agents are quite complex. They go into BigQuery, they get knowledge, they come back. The scenario that returns that knowledge actually triage it and summarizes it so it gets sensible context back. I couldn't do that in this interface because the tools can't be little mini scenarios. And I'm pretty certain that's true. And then the answer to that was, well, why don't you set them up as on-demand scenarios? So I'm back to, in a way, the current way in which make agents work, because I'd have a bunch of on-demand scenarios as tools or knowledge, and my make agent would be an on-demand scenario itself. So you'd have one module going through a bunch of on-demand scenarios, and that's it. And it may work better than the current agent module, because when you open this up, let me show you, there are, to be fair, a few more things that you can do that were potentially missing in the other agent, which is under the advanced settings, like an output schema and what have you. So here's another example agent. The examples seem to me to have been very, very linear in terms of something comes into an agent, it does something, it sends an output. But I personally believe that where agents become very, very powerful is when they do more meaningful triaging rather than just fetching information, pushing it together, and so on. So in my use case, I would still have on-demand scenarios giving the agent knowledge, because all my knowledge is being put into BigQuery as embeddings. I don't think this execution would feel very different to what we've got at the moment. I think I'd end up with it being my agents not being embedded in scenarios, but being their own on-demand scenarios, them calling on-demand scenarios to get what they need, and then returning an input, which to me instinctively feels a more convoluted way of executing and a more credit-heavy way of getting stuff done. Which brings me on to my final observation about agents. And I'm not talking about Make here on their own. I'm also talking about other automation solutions like N8N and so on. I really question with, for example, the really good agent SDKs that are coming out of Google, OpenAI, and so on, how much of this agent construction we actually need in our automation scenarios. Would they not be better being done externally and pulled back? So that's one of the things that I'm going to explore. But anyway, if you have been playing with agents, this is just a quick show and tell of some of the examples that were shared with us. I couldn't go deeper into it because it's not in my environment, but this is how agents are going to work. You know, if you have your thoughts about that, please put them in the comment. My gut is telling me that the challenge that Make have got is triaging the feedback they get, because what is good for an enterprise is maybe not good for a solopreneur, and they might want different things. And yeah, I think having an agent, like this idea of cloning scenarios to have the agent in it, is just a governance issue waiting to explode on someone, because you just need one person to make a change in the agent that exists in scenario A and it's not replicated in B or C. That'll cause a nightmare. So yeah, like I said, early days to see where that goes, whether I'd use it or not, but you now know the direction of travel. Thank you for watching.